Hello, and welcome to the AV Forums Movies Podcast, streaming live on the 6th of April, 2021. This is the podcast where we discuss the best and biggest movies from an AV perspective. I'm Tom Davies, and sitting across the country from me is Harlow.
And Godzilla.
And in a third location, it's Simon Crust.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Kaz. Hello to everyone playing along at home, and welcome to everyone in the future.
Indeed. Oh, wow. Thanks for that, Si. Yeah, if you are listening live, thanks very much. No, I liked it. It's good. Yeah, welcome if you are listening live. Oh, my goodness. This is going great. I'm enjoying this already. You'll have noticed that it's a bit of a different format for our podcast. This is going to be a monthly special podcast all about movies. It is going to be a movable podcast because we're going to wait for big releases to drop each month. And then within the following week of release, we will be back here talking about them and a relevant AV topic. So as this is our first go at it, please do give us your feedback at avforums.com. And you can ask us any questions, make any suggestions you like. So let's crack on with it, shall we? Kaz, do you fancy telling us what people can win in the current competitions on the website?
Nothing. We're not giving them anything.
Oh, that's sad.
Nope, I refuse. Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. They can win a bunch of prizes. There's Michael Palin's Travels of a Lifetime on Blu-ray, Journey of a Lifetime on Blu-ray, totally unrelated, very biblical. They can win Silent Action, Van Damme's Wake of Death, Final Fantasy 26 on 4K. I've actually got that, so I'm going to review that as well. You can't see it. I'm not holding up something invisible. It is here. Anyway, you can win an SVS SB 1000 Pro, 10 runner-up prizes as well. A copy of The Undoing, HBO Limited series on Blu-ray, Bloodlands on Blu-ray, Gattaca on 4K, Yellowstone Season 2 on Blu-ray, and a 2 terabyte Humax or a 4K Freeview player worth $279. Save the best for last.
That's very exciting. You should definitely go over to the website and enter those. Who can enter, Kaz?
Who can enter it? Everybody who joins AV Forums and is very, very nice to us.
And is from the UK.
Yes, okay. we weren't going to tell them that, but okay.
You can also become a patron for our patron exclusive competitions. So make sure you do that, just like our new patron, Nath. So welcome to the club, Nath. You can enjoy our special April offer, which is 10% off merchandise. That's for all AVF patrons. So yeah, there's another reason to support us every month. So stay tuned for a live giveaway. A little later in the show, we'll be giving away something a little bit extra. But today we are going to be discussing a movie that I have been super looking forward to, a movie where a monkey hits a lizard. Finally, somebody is brave enough to stand up to those tyrants at Peter. But before we get on to that, guys, how are you doing? Kaz, what have you been up to? You've been watching every DC movie ever made. Is that because you hate yourself?
No, it's because I've had an epiphany. Clearly, I was totally done with DC. I've said this many times on the forums. I was done. I wasn't interested in anything they had to offer, and I have to say, everything that the studio has announced currently, Blue Beetle, doesn't interest me at all. But they pulled me back in with this fabled Zack Snyder's Justice League, and yeah, I'm happily rewatching them, getting the kids into them. Now my go-to is going to be watching all of the Zack Snyder films with the kids and all of the Justice League, and related DC animated universe movies with the kids. It's about as good as it gets for DC.
Yeah, that's true. The animated movies, some of those are awesome.
Yeah, they really are. I just I finished showing them Doom over Easter. It's still one of my favorites. It's still the reason why I love Batman.
That's awesome. Sorry, what about you? You watched Dawn of the Dead for review recently, didn't you? How's that looking and sounding these days?
wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Who'd have thought that a film of that ilk would get such a fantastic release? Newly remastered, picture and sound, on the theatrical version at least. Absolutely spectacular, absolutely spectacular. Color, detail, and it's a great film. You know, it's a great film. It deserves all the love and attention that it got.
Yeah, that new huge box set comes with all 3 cuts as well, right?
All 3 cuts, yeah.
Have
all
you
3 major cuts. There is one more that you could, the super extended edition, which has a few extra minutes here and there. Doesn't include that one, but you know, so
Did you watched all of them? Did you watch all 3?
I did watch all 3.
Which one's the best one? I've not seen the Argento cut.
For me, the theatrical cut is by far the superior cut. It has all the character detail, but keeps the pacing. The extended cut is got a few more character beats and a slightly slower pacing, and the Argento cut's just mental. It cuts out massive lumps of, you know, exposition and what's going on with the characters. Okay, it's faster and it's got a bit more heavy music to it, but it's you know, it's mental. I couldn't get on with it at all. Much prefer the theatrical version.
I'm going to buy it and I'm going to watch the Argento. I'm quite an Argento fan. I like his brand of insanity. So yeah, awesome. So hey, get this, from one global apocalyptic disaster to another. How's that? Good segue. Good segue. Pretty good.
Brilliant.
This week we watched Monster Smash 'em Up Godzilla vs. Kong. So get ready to hear our thoughts on that in our feature presentation.
If you enjoy the podcast on YouTube, then please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, then please leave us a rating on your podcast app. We invite you to email questions and feedback to podcast@avforums.com and join in with this episode's discussion thread in the podcasts forum at AV Forums.
Now, before we get into it with the kaiju spectacle, we would like to ask you, our delightful listeners, if you have any particular movies in mind that are saved by their sheer spectacle. So movies that are maybe not so great on plot, character front, but have effects that are good enough to save the movie. Or alternatively, you can tell us which movies would be great if it weren't for their god-awful CGI. Let us know your thoughts in the chat, the live chat, if you're listening live. Or if you're not listening live, let us know at a later date. This is going well, isn't it? You can hit us up in the comments on the podcast threads or on the forums if you're listening at your leisure. But we'll be circling back around to some of your suggestions a little bit later on. What do we think about this? So what were your first, just initial impressions of this movie?
You know what? I really quite liked it. I went into it thinking, "Oh, this is going to be god awful." I think a lot has to do with it was the day. It was a hot, nice, sunny day. I had barbecue hot wings in the afternoon, little can of beer, and I sat down. I turned it on. And I thought, this is great fun. You know, it fulfilled everything that you would want to do from a film with, as you put it, a giant ape hitting a giant lizard. It did exactly that. And this is all I wanted to get from it. And on that, it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
You're not going to get any arguments from me.
Well, no, I mean, there are, you know, the other side of the coin is, of course, that's all it is. Yeah. So if you want any more character development from the human counterparts, there ain't none of that. Don't come here if you want, you know, character arcs and story development and plot. Essentially, if you want a plot in your film, don't come for this, because you're not going to get it. All you've got is a lizard and a monkey, and they go, and it's great.
Yeah, and we'll get into it with the character arcs a little bit later on. But Kaz, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to win any Oscars, is it?
It might do. Special effects.
Special effects, yeah. Well, it was, sound
design.
I think it's kind of the Citizen Kane of monster movies, as you were. But look, I grew up with Stallone and Arnie, and some of their movies and I'm looking at like Conan and the Rocky sequels in particular. They involved an underdog character who lost his first battle against a giant opposing force and had to go on some kind of quest and retrieve or gain some kind of power to be able to go back and really muster every strength and fight his enemy as best he could. And in some circumstances, discover that there was a grander threat out there, be he a Russian. You know, this is Rocky 2, 3, and 4 rolled into one for me. This is Conan. So I have no interest in what the humans have to say, and still think that there's character development in this. It's just in relation to Kong, and I loved him. I loved his butt scratching, waterfall showering, you know, rough around the edges, brawler. I loved his fights. I loved his tenacity. I loved his little
Mel Gibson nod there.
Beautiful Lethal Weapon 2 moment. Absolutely perfectly reconstructed with a giant ape. And
absolute nonsense, but
yeah, I loved it. I loved the Baby Yoda ET moment. Very, very. There's, you know, I loved it. I have no problem with the fact that all of the humans were pretty much, apart from the deaf girl with her sign language business, which I thought was quite sweet. All of the returning characters were utterly wasted, and I would have happily watched the movie without their scenes. But it wasn't about that. It was Kong's character journey. It was his evolution across the movie, and even to a certain extent, my favorite, Godzilla, took a back seat to that, and I was okay with that. And it delivered in spectacle. It was weird because I'm getting too much into it, but for me, it felt like it was updating the classic old Men in Rubber Suits movie for the age of CG. It felt like two men in rubber suits punching each other, but also looked like really well done CG. It kind of managed to tread a very fine line between comical and homage, and I loved it. It's beautiful. And bloody hell, neon Hong Kong, or I've been calling it Neon Tokyo for forever, but Neon Hong Kong looks just superb.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Quite. I was going to say an eyesore. The opposite. What's the opposite of an eyesore?
Sore eye.
Eye candy.
Eye candy. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, proper eye candy. So yeah, we will get into it. Before we do, I just wanted to set up our little live giveaway. All of you who are in the chat, there is 29 of you at the moment, so that's 29. You got a 1 in 29 chance of winning our live giveaway. The tagline for Godzilla vs. Kong is "One will fall," which is a bit flat. That's not a very good tagline, if you ask me. So we want you, the listeners, to give us a better tagline, something that's really going to either sell this movie or just rip the piss out of it. It is up to you entirely. The best answer that appears on the chat this evening will win a mystery Blu-ray. I'm going to keep it mysterious. How's that? It will win a mystery Blu-ray for your witty, insightful taglines. But let's get back to the film. So what's the plot? There is a plot. What is the plot of?
There isn't a plot.
There is a plot. There is a plot. The plot is that Kong is as worthy a king of monsters as Godzilla. The two of them are natural enemies, and so for his own safety, the lovely Monarch Corporation from the previous entries into the Monsterverse are hiding him away in a little dome, still on Skull Island, but a sort of destroyed and flattened Skull Island, until Godzilla starts wrecking up the joint for no apparent reason. So they decide to give Kong the opportunity to reinstate his ancestral power deep inside the Hollow Earth and take on Godzilla as that alpha titan. That's pretty much the plot, right? Am I missing anything out there?
Well, you're missing anything that would be too spoilery, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that is. But yeah, it's a perfectly serviceable plot to go with for this. And I've got to jump straight in with addressing the elephant in the room, which is exactly what 3D Blu-ray Bunker is noting. Never quite sure why Michael Bay gets such a bashing for his films about giant robots hitting each other. People are quite accepting of giant monsters hitting each other. So look, the reason why Michael Bay gets a bashing is because he doesn't give his giant robots any character. His giant robots aren't characters. They're just giant robots who piss on each other.
They are barely present in the landscape. The landscape is paper and they float through it. I'm not a big Transformers fan.
The only reason that he gets a pass on the first one is because people love Optimus Prime from days gone by. It's nothing to do with the Optimus Prime they see in that movie. He doesn't believe in character development. He believes in upskirt shots of teenage girls. But he doesn't do anything.
Helicopters at sunset.
Yeah, helicopters at sunset. Michael Bay does stuff good. I love The Rock, but the reason why this gets a pass where that doesn't is because none of the Transformers movies are about the robots as characters. They're just there, as you say, to hit each other. But I find that you could substitute Kong for Stallone and Rocky. It's just people choose not to see it that way, and that's fine. But there is an arc, there is a character there, and he has got character development
from the first seconds. The opening, the very opening shots of this movie is I noticed in my review, just like a regular dude struggling to get out of bed. Immediately Kong is a relatable everyman. It's, you've got a little bit of a needle drop there, you've got like you said, the famous butt scratch, and he straight away he is the guy that we are in this for. And the movie seriously leans into that, and in doing so, as we've already said, leans well away from any sort of like human interaction. Well, not entirely, but it's all very perfunctory. The human interaction is very like you could get rid of some of it, and quite a lot of it, and lose very little from the film.
Yeah, you could have a movie like this with with Kong in the Hollow Earth without any human characters, and he could be the hero character who has to go on the quest and do the stuff and defeat the monsters along the way, and you could build him up as that character. It's nothing that wasn't done before in the 80s and 90s. And I dare say he put in a better acting performance than we came to expect from Arnie back in those days.
Well, not only that, Kong has got, nearly 100 years worth of backstory, isn't he? He's been around since 1933. So there's a lot of people know Kong. Godzilla's only been around since the 50s. And even then, he's quite niche. So a lot of people would side with Kong. My own son was saying, because there was many debates about who would win. Yeah, many debates between me and my two boys. One was Godzilla Pro, the other was Kong Pro. And the one that's saying Kong Pro, Luke, he was saying, look, King Kong has got opposable thumbs, was his main argument. And every time he fights a big lizard, he rips the head open, which he almost did in this film, did he not?
Yeah, so gave it a good go. Yeah,
he gave it a good go. Yeah,
yeah, it's true. I think I've got to object to you saying that Godzilla is niche. It's like Godzilla is the longest running movie franchise in history. Like maybe. Well, no. Like the world over, he is the longest. The movie with the longest running franchise is Godzilla. There are tens and tens of them, and so he's got, I think he's got as storied a background as Godzilla, but the presentation, oh yeah, sorry, as Kong, but the presentation of Kong is that he is a thinker. He has always been a thinker, whereas Godzilla is more often a bit of a mindless distraction guy. But they play up to that in this film quite nicely, I thought, actually.
I don't know whether I thought of Godzilla as completely mindless. I just don't think he's, I mean, I don't think he's bothered about destruction to serve what's his purpose.
Yeah, he's pure lizard brain instinct.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. He's the John Wick of the monster world. He's out there to kill other monsters, and they can have 3 heads. He'll kill all 3 heads. That's just what he does. Okay, he might have to grab a couple of buildings and smack them around the head with them, but he doesn't care. He's not interested in what HR have to say about that. He's not interested in any of the fallout from it. I'm totally on board with that. I'm not sure I'd have bought it if this story had Godzilla repurposed as the kind of human underdog brawler. It would have been interesting if they tried to do that, because I don't buy that, but I do buy him.
He did that in the last film, didn't he? He was the underdog in the last film with that 3-headed thing.
He was, but I mean, as in a more human touch. He was the person in the last film who had to prove he was king of the monsters. But I don't think I ever felt like he was doing it for man, even though that's what they wanted him to do. It's just by the wayside. You know, he was doing it for himself, and I'm okay with that. Whereas in Kong, you know, you get a feeling, you know, he flips the boat, he does various things in it. You get a feeling that he does care. Godzilla doesn't care. He just move on to the next monster.
It's sort of it's summed up just by a couple of little close-up shots. There's a really neat one of the scene you were just mentioning, Kaz, their first interaction, which is the one that you see in the trailer on top of the aircraft carriers. And there's a really nice little moment where Kong sees Godzilla coming and he looks, there's a boat, there's a boat, there's a boat, got it. And he jumps, and you can just see the thought process going in his mind. And there's like the flip of that later on, the Hong Kong showdown, where Godzilla, Kong is a little bit behind, and Godzilla sees his opportunity to take advantage and just smiles at him. And it's just like that. Those two interactions are just so, they feel really like properly Adam Wingard. So the director of the movie, Adam Wingard, is he's another one of these like indie directors who have made it big. And this is his kind of first big movie. I mean, he probably had a fair budget for the Blair Witch reboot and Death Note, but this is his first proper like blockbuster. And it's those little bits in there, those little bits of like humor, those little human touches, and like this completely insane landscape of nonsense that made it feel like particularly like it gave it a more personal touch. You mentioned Godzilla. No, you mentioned King of the Monsters before, Simon. When I think of that film, I just think of like brainless destruction.
Yeah.
But this felt like not brainless destruction. It felt like wanton destruction, but it felt like behind it there was a sense of humor, and that's just so appreciated. So appreciated.
But there was feeling behind the fights, wasn't there? There's, can we say there's 3 big fights, and in each one you get a feeling of, okay, they've been hurt. That one won that one. That one won that one. What's going to happen next? And there is genuine. Well, I felt emotion, certainly in the last pitch battle between the two of them. We won't go into the very final thing because it's even though you could probably guess from the trailer, actually, if you watch close enough, you can probably guess what happens and how it ends.
Probably
But at the end,
definitely
it wasn't hateful, was it? I mean, although we've spoken about the stupid or the daft or not inconsequential human elements, everything had a purpose for it. Even as stupid as it was, the Hollow Earth bit, the getting in those flying spaceships, everything led to that final confrontation. It all had a purpose. It all had a point. Whereas in some of the other films, there was just, you felt like, oh, that's had to happen so that they can get to a certain point.
Yep.
Whereas this thing had a kind of narrative flowing through it. And Adam Wingard did it was very good to give that emotional beat to Kong, even though he's a Godzilla fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. I read an interview with him for let me get this wrong. I think it was Games Radar, where he said that part of his research for this was just watching every single Godzilla movie, and every single Kong movie. So there are little touches in there as well, little nods, little references to previous entries throughout the decades in both characters' history, and that sort of love for both of the characters sort of came through, I think. But for me, it came through. And I was really thoroughly engaged with the plight of both monsters.
Yeah.
Which is what you want out of this film, isn't it? Which is what you want. He wisely chose to spend most of his time with the monsters, because that's what you come for.
Yeah. They're the characters. They're the characters you're following. You could have had the whole thing set in the Hollow Earth without any humans, and no one would be complaining about wanton destruction, because obviously they're just destroying the mountains and the rock landscape and whatever you find down there, and it would have been the same story.
I was a huge fan of that Hollow Earth stuff. Massive fan of the Hollow Earth. Like I have a particular affinity for conspiracy theory anyway, and there were lots of little bits. I'm not sure who was responsible for it in the scripting of it, but there were lots of little nods to genuine beliefs for the people who are out there enough to really believe that there is a Hollow Earth and that there is a magical energy at the center of it. And just little things like the entrance to it being in Antarctica, and the idea of gravity being on both sides of the core and the crust, and that sort of stuff. Just like, as a conspiracy nerd, it pleased me immensely.
It pleased my 5-year-old son immensely as well. He's looking for portals to the Hollow Earth everywhere. Every night he asks me, is the Hollow Earth real? I'm like, no, it's still not real. It's like Batman and Superman and the rest of it, but they're real. Yeah, he's going to have lots of pleasure in the Hollow Earth, I'm sure. Conspiracy
nuts and 5-year-olds, that's who this movie is for. Yeah, so I think all of us have just enjoyed it for what it is, which is nonsense piled on nonsense, and just pure joy in exploring that nonsense to the nth degree. That legitimate criticisms of it obviously are the human cast, of whom there are some really good actors in there, and just have basically nothing to do except say the lines which move them from one place to another.
I really like Kyle Chandler. I got a lot of time for him. He's great in Friday Night Lights, and every movie he pops in, he's really good value for money, and he's turned up in these Godzilla movies, and it's such a waste of time. And in this one, he was playing that 24 role, where Jack Bauer has saved the president's life 8 times in a row, and he's the guy who goes, yeah, this time he's turned bad.
He's the guy who knows Godzilla the best.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the most willing to say, I don't know.
Yeah, he's seen Godzilla save the world from an assortment of monsters, and not do anything without a strict purpose. And he just flips his hand in the air and goes, nah, he's an animal. He's just an animal. It's the most pathetic scripting ever. And I felt so sorry. It's like his only line in the whole movie. And he better have got paid a lot of money for that. disappointing.
All of those like through characters are just, I just can't connect with them. That's it became a little bit of a problem when they started. There was a stretch where Millie Bobby Brown and
The Scooby-Doo gang.
yeah, exactly, Brian Tyree Henry and oh god, I've forgotten his name. It's really embarrassing. But the kid from Hunt for the Wilder People, Julian. What's his name? Sorry, Julian. They started to take up too much screen time in the back half of it, which was kind of unfortunate because none of them weren't given the material to carry the movie, and they maybe didn't quite have the talent to carry the movie, dare I say it, and they sort of needed to for like this 15-20 minute period. That was a bit of an issue for me, but
utterly redundant.
Mm-hmm.
Utterly redundant. Just take those scenes
Still,
out.
did break up some of the CGI, didn't it?
It did, but much more interesting I found was the new characters, Rebecca Hall and the young deaf girl, her adopted daughter, and her connection with Godzilla. I wasn't so interested in the weird assassin girl. I can't remember the actress's name. She's from it eludes me. Isa Gonzalez, is it?
The daughter of the Any Bad Guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She seemed a bit pointless to me.
Mm-hmm.
The Any Bad Guy seemed a bit pointless to me.
Completely.
But and I didn't like Skarsgård's random flitting from coward to genius scientist to ace pilot to whatever the scene demanded. But just the daughter and the mother and the development with Kong was nice. Was a nice touch and had nods for me back to the maybe not as much the original movie, but the 80s one with Bridges and Kong saves the girl.
Mm-hmm.
It had a nice feel to it, and it did more for Kong's character, which was important. Whereas I felt like everything on the Godzilla side, the Scooby-Doo gang doing their thing was, is no. So they could have just stuck with the Kong side.
Yeah.
But I guess the others were brought in by contract. Got to give them some lines, people.
Yeah, I imagine they had franchise deals in their contracts. It's interesting that you brought up the fact that it's people doing stuff in between CGI. Just thinking about this from the perspective of it being a streaming rental, a home streaming rental. The question that I had in my mind is, were we missing out not seeing it on the big screen? And my gut instinct says probably, or was watching it on the small screen hiding maybe some of the sins of the CGI. I mean, obviously we're all fortunate enough to have probably watched it on a semi-decent television and semi-decent sound system, but are we still missing out, do you think, by having to watch it in this way?
Only on the scale, I think. That's the biggest thing, because these are giant lizards fighting in and around skyscrapers, and watching it on your telly, even a 65-inch when you're only 8 foot away, you still lose the scale of a 20-foot screen or whatever. Whether or not that impacts on the CGI, I don't know. That's difficult. That's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah. It was just something that sort of went through my head a couple of times. I was thinking, this looks really great on my TV. How would it look on the? I want to know how it would look on a big screen.
I mean, I think CG tends to show up when I'm revisiting classics in 4K. Bad CG still stands out, even if you're watching it at home. I don't know whether the big screen makes it glaring. I find the big screen because the distance ratio is still there's still a distance ratio thing to watching it on a big screen, depending obviously where you sit. But I don't know whether I find that it's all that much different. That's not to say that the big screen wouldn't have been the preferred way of choice. That, or I'm waiting for that Zack Snyder 4:3 cut of Godzilla versus Kong. But other than that, I mean, I think it would have been great in the big screen. But I think the CG was spot on for me. I didn't have any problems with it, and it was a very comic booky movie. So I was okay
colourful.
with that. Yeah, super. But it was over colourful in a good way. It reminded me of something like Tron, where it's not shooting for reality. We're going to go to the Hollow Earth, and the Hollow Earth is going to be insane. You know, it's not going to be something out of an old Jules Verne adaptation. It's going to be absolutely insane, and everyone down there has had a neon disco. And we're going to land in Hong Kong. Well, it's not going to be a Hong Kong you've ever seen before. In Hong Kong, everyone's, tripping on neon and prepping for Dolby Vision. It's proper crazy greens and purples and everything. It's the guy who directed The Guest. Churning out
direct line there.
Churning out electro beats and showing us 80s colors lensed through a 2021 visual spectrum in Dolby Vision. I mean, he's having a crazy good time doing it, and so I'm quite easy to get on board with that without looking at it and going, that doesn't look real. It doesn't look real. It's not real, but it's all good.
There was no point in it that it took me out of the movie, or at least the CGI never took me out of the movie. Some of the more outlandish ideas took me out of the movie, but the CGI itself, I felt was okay. I thought it was used quite well. I mean, it's a big dumb CGI movie. You kind of it delivered on what you expect. I felt.
Yeah, I would probably say that none of it stood out. I wasn't brought out at any point by thinking, oh, that looked a bit iffy. It all looked as it should, I suppose. That's probably the best. Nothing in it made me go, oh my god, look at the advances in CGI, but none of it equally made me go like, wow, that was shocking. And that's all you need, isn't it? Just to keep the immersion, not to break the immersion. And it didn't.
Yeah, because you could see what was going on, which is a big help. Unlike the King of the Monsters one, where it was all dark and dingy and raining or snowing or whatever, so they were kind of hiding. It's almost as if they were trying to hide the CGI behind visual blur.
Yes.
Whereas in this one, they were quite upfront about it. Look at this. And I thought it worked very well.
They had faith in the presentation of it, which says quite a lot, really, which is nice. One thing I just wanted to come back to, right at the top of the show, we talked about, it's not going to win any awards. And so you mentioned the sound design.
Could win sound design.
Yeah, for me, that it was really good use of the 3D soundstage. I watched it with Dolby Atmos. I imagine both of you guys did too.
I didn't get Dolby Atmos through for this one.
Oh, okay.
No, I could have done, but I had. It's a setup issue.
Okay.
I had faux Dolby Atmos.
There was
Fat Moss.
Fat Moss.
Yeah.
Bit of Fat Moss. Love a bit of Fat Moss. But no.
But it worked well.
There was overhead. There was use of the overhead in a really satisfying way that complemented the action. The tail, the Godzilla tail moving above the scene and the destruction of the buildings. And so I thought it was really, really well designed. I've seen people on the forum saying that they thought the dialogue was low in the mix, but I didn't experience that.
I never got that.
No, I didn't get any of that.
I didn't get that.
I wonder if it's to do with how the Atmos is presenting itself. But yeah, I thought it was really, really awesome. Like the sound design for me was the best that I've heard in the MonsterVerse movies. Not ever, but there was just some really good like object. Move on. I've run out of words.
Yeah, it's good based sound design. I can hear you on that.
It sounds
fully
good.
believe that.
It sounds good.
I fully believe that. Do we think though? Are we gonna? I mean, do we think this is an example of where CG has benefited a movie then? Tying it into our overlying topic.
100%. 100%. This movie would not exist without the current level of technology.
Yes.
Or maybe it would, but it would look like a pile of crap.
Yes. It made
you saying that picture behind you is a pile of crap.
It is a delightful pile of crap, yes.
Just doesn't look as good as this.
It is a lovable, wonderful, terrible pile of crap. This is a movie of the CGI era, isn't it? This is very much of the moment. Good. That was a good segue, Kaz, to bring us on to our discussion. And I do apologize, everybody who can't see, but Stuart has just put up a rather bizarre GIF of Godzilla and Kong shaking hands. Good friends.
Oh, you should have found the Chewits advert.
So earlier in the week, I'm moving on. Earlier in the week, we posted a thread on the forum asking people, asking the skull-crawling denizens of the Hollow Earth, otherwise known as the AVF members, which movies they'd seen where the CGI had really genuinely impacted them. And the responses were awesome and almost exactly as you would expect, because the one that came out top of everything was Terminator 2. Which
groundbreaking.
100%. Inarguably one of the greatest leaps forward in computer generated imagery in film. And Stu's just put up the picture of the T-1000 walking out of the flames, like nothing you had ever seen before, and kind of still stands up. It doesn't look
still stands up. Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't look hokey at all.
I wonder whether there's an element of pre-design in it, thinking about it. I mean, I don't know how at what level they had interaction between the script for it and the design of the T-1000, but the T-1000 is very much like a 3D CG model. It's in retaining that basic kind of complexity to it, which is like a big mercury blob. It maybe plays to the strengths of what CGI back then could do convincingly, because obviously if you go too far and you try and bring people back from the dead and try and de-age people and get them to kick people on the street, you lose a little bit of it. But they kept it really simple, and they said, well, CG can render a mercury blob, so let's make our villain a mercury blob and kind of blend our character actor Robert Patrick into this blob. And that worked quite well. Even his weapons were kind of blunt instruments molded from mercury. I mean, and it was a very clever idea to do that within the limitations of the technology, and I think that's why it stands up.
I think that's one of the things that makes it so good. Like you say, it's within the limitations of the technology. It is the CGI that they were capable of at the time, confidently, or just about, pushing the boundaries, but they knew that this was something that they could do. And to blend that with the practical effects that they knew were going to look awesome, it's that blend of the two that really made it stand out. What about you, Si? Are there any other movies that spring immediately to mind as like
immediately is for groundbreaking effects? Terminator 2 was the early one, but Jurassic Park would be the next one for me, the next big one. The photorealistic dinosaurs, which again had never been seen before. That was quite amazing, absolutely amazing. And but not only were they in the frame and being interacted with, but the when the Velociraptor jumps up through that vent, that there was incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
they
was
did.
And again, blending with the practical effects, the T-Rex was both. So and it was seamless. So yeah, and I've only got better with time.
Yeah, it
I
still
think
stands up. Yeah.
it does. I said on the forums that movie was like a religious experience for me when I was like 9 years old watching
Yeah.
it in the cinema. I was just, yeah, I think I saw it maybe 3 or 4 times at the cinema. God,
Yeah.
that made quite the impression on a young me. Yeah, that good shout. Kaz, what about you? Anything that we've not mentioned?
Well, I mean, something like Terminator 2 has got to be the benchmark for it. But I mean, it's interesting across the years because I would say that it might not be a landmark vehicle, but possibly my go-to example of a film which is just defined by visuals and by audio is and probably always will be Tron Legacy. And unfortunately, it pushed too far with the recreation of a young Jeff Bridges as Clue. But it's an entirely CG landscape. Like the whole thing is CG, and it's flawless. Otherwise flawless. The light cycle bikes, jumping and conversing them in slow motion, the aerial battles, the big sail ships. I mean, it's all, the whole world is rendered so stunning and so vivid. I mean, again, there's some nods of it in Godzilla versus Kong. I reckon he's definitely watched Tron Legacy. It's a proper audio visual movie, and it couldn't have been done without CG. And I appreciate they had a bit too much young Jeff Bridges. They could have used it more subtly, and it would have stood better.
Rubbery Clue.
Better. Yeah, it's a shame.
Clue.
He was a little bit faux in it. I actually probably was a bit more forgiving of Clue because he almost wasn't supposed to be as real because he was like Clue.
He was full computer.
Yeah, but I didn't like young Jeff Bridges at the beginning because it was his voice, but there were a couple of, shots and winks.
If you compare that young Jeff Bridges to young Kurt Russell at the start of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, as an example of how far that that de-aging has come. That was actually something that was mentioned by Check's notes, Sloppy Bob on the forum, and Bruce Leroy, in fact, both mentioned this idea of digitally de-aging. Gemini Man was the movie that came up for that, which I think it came up as an example of where CGI throws you out of the movie.
It's really hard to explain whether it's CGI in that or whether it's just shooting at a stupid frame rate.
That's true. It looks odd all the way
does.
through.
Already, even in the non-CG bits, you're like, this doesn't look right. It's one of those ones I had to flip to the Blu-ray for because and even then it looks too real, but the 4K is just it's just painful.
And I think Sloppy Bob mentioned Terminator Dark Fate. I'm going to enjoy saying these usernames out loud.
Oh yeah, Terminator Dark Fate. Beginning of that.
Good de-aging, average movie.
But I mean, it's where we've come to, isn't it? I mean, we've come to that beginning is just pretty much flawless for all 3 characters. I mean, I was totally on board with that. I mean, it was really, really well done.
Edward Furlong's Dark Fate came nearly 30 years too late, but it was satisfying.
Yeah, it was. It was a very Alien 3 moment. But yeah, I think that's a tremendous example of how far we've come with it. It's interesting. I think Lucas is King pointed out on the same thread that we take it a little bit for granted. We talk about CG because he said that what we do is we only call it out when we notice it, but actually it's in everything. And it is an interesting point, because he had a video in there that he showed, and it shows you things like, for example, watching Avengers Assemble, the first Avengers movie, and pretty much all of the Avengers movie, where you've got Iron Man flying around. You forget, you look at Iron Man and you go, well, he doesn't look quite right in some of the scenes, but you forget that actually the entire shot is CG. Like the whole backdrop is CG.
Yeah, you don't think about it, do you?
Yeah,
it doesn't even occur to you.
No, you only notice the bits that you notice as being out of place. And I think that's true. There's a lot of good CG out there, which we take for granted.
On the chat, a grumpy capybara has just pointed out that Samuel L. Jackson's de-aging was convincing in Captain Marvel. It was. He looked perfect. Still kind of walked like an old man. Same with Bobby De Niro in The Irishman. Like you can't take the age out of the hips. You
know what? They nailed Robert De Niro looking like 20, 30 years younger than he is. They just didn't nail him looking like he was 30. So that was stupid. They got it right for the Vietnam scene.
Yeah.
In Irishman, a few seconds of him in the war looked perfect.
Yeah.
But trying to have him actually in scenes, running around, driving a car, and looking really young, it didn't convince at all. They should have just made him 20, 30 years younger, and they could have pulled it off. But you're right. It's the limitations of movement. It's they go too far, I think. But it is an interesting thing where one day, actors are going to be immortal, and they're going to bring them back for the dead, aren't they, Leia?
And and Peter Cushing. We're not sure about that one, are we, Moff Tarkin?
No,
it's
I
Uncanny
don't.
Valley stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But they could have done both of them with less is more. Moff Tarkin, I reckon they could have gotten away with in reflection and in profile shots, and not have him dead on talking to the camera.
I would have been
okay with that. Completely convinced that he was there, and still made fans go wow, without making fans go wow, that's not real. And same with Leia. It was utterly convincing, but they stayed on her too long at the end, and then it was like, I'm out of here.
As soon as she spoke, it was nope.
But they didn't need to. They didn't need to do that.
No.
And I think arguably they did it a little bit in Mandalorian as well. And I thought it was really good in Mandalorian, but I think it was a bit too much. You didn't like it at all.
Really didn't like it at all. I was, Daisy. I was quite upset with the way that it looked. I just...
Couldn't he have just not spoken there, though?
He could have, but even so, there was something about, and it's the same with Moff Tarkin and Leia in Rogue One. We shan't spoil who we're talking about, but waxy skin, rubbery over exaggerated facial movements, which I think comes from. I think Cos brought it up on the thread that it comes from the necessity of having a real person with prosthetics plus like a CG mask, and that blend it seems to either encourage actors to exaggerate their facial movements in order to get anything across, or I'm not sure what it is, but no, I really dislike that.
I think they should have cast Sebastian Stan. I'd have been up for that, or they should have just done a deep fake, which was another interesting thing on the thread, wasn't it? Talking about the deep fake version of that scene, and of a lot of scenes, including Tron's Clue.
And the Irishman as well.
Yeah, although you could argue that 11 years later, a deep fake of Tron's Clue is a little bit unfair, because with modern technology, you could probably do a Kurt Russell. But yeah, it's interesting, the debate going, why do they get it right, and how studios must see these deep fakes and go, how they've polished up our multi-million-dollar effects here and made them look really good. It is interesting that they can do it. And
the thing with those deep fake reels is that they tend to be a couple of minutes long.
Yeah.
and they will, I'm sure, show the points where the deepfake works better than the digital de-aging. However, I am of the suspicion that if you threw an unusual camera angle at it, it would probably come out looking like I think the better bits would look better, and the bad bits would look much worse. So I'm not sure if there's a trade-off there.
To play devil's advocate, I would agree with what you're saying, but to play devil's advocate, I don't get why that doesn't mean they don't just do it the way they're doing it, and then do whatever the deepfake people are doing it on top to the scenes where it works. I mean, I don't get it. Like,
Can't argue with that.
You know, if you could, for example, you could do it the way they did it for Tarkin, and then when he turns around, deepfake it, and if they could make him look real, why would you not do it? Why would you not do it better? I don't get quite what the technology is that people at home have, that these big effects studios. I mean, I know that it has to go through, you know, a 2K pipe or a 4K pipe, and all of the effects are overlaid and HDR graded and everything else, and nobody is doing that from home. But I'm curious as to why they can get it right even for a couple of scenes, because I'll give them those couple of scenes. They want to do it for the 1 minute of screen time that Leia's got.
Yeah,
it would look so much better and not take you out of the movie. But yeah, it's I guess it's who they pay to do the effects. Someone I think mentioned that's a big factor. Get which effects studio you use.
Oh boy, the crunch culture as well has a huge impact on movies. I think Black Panther was a particular victim of that, where, I hope I'm not making things up, I heard that the team responsible for the grand battle in Black Panther, that there was a culture of crunch, and therefore the effects came out of it looking perhaps less polished than they could have done. And I think there's a bit of a problem with the attitude in Hollywood that CGI can cover a multitude of sins, and that it can be done at whatever notice they want it to. And it's the same kind of, they're going to go through the same reckoning that video games are going to go through sooner or later, which is that you can only ask so much of people within a certain time to a certain level of quality until people hit breaking point, basically. And I think there are a lot of blockbusters that you think that should look good, but it doesn't. Why not? And I think that's maybe going to be something that we could talk about again in future, possibly. Yeah. Have you seen anything like that, Si? Anything recent that you've thought like CGI is unnecessarily bad, or just not quite up to snuff?
Recently?
Semi-recently. We have been in lockdown for a year.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a list of stuff where the CGI isn't great, but none of it's particularly recent.
Go for it. What have you got?
Some of the stuff that is so, I mean, I'll start right at the top and say any of the Star Wars prequels and specialized versions. I think all the CG in there is too much in your face, because one, it doesn't sit necessarily quite well in the frame, and it makes static backgrounds. I mean, there's lots of crap flying around, but the actors themselves that are in these backgrounds are just sort of sitting or standing, or they maybe walk from 6 foot, which is the length of the green screen, and that kind of that effect is, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me.
It's ironic that he obviously included these things to enhance the film, but the end result is that actually it takes you out of the film to go, what the hell is that? Yeah, definitely agree with you on that one.
Again, so semi-old films, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, when they're swinging through the trees and the monkeys. Just
that is hideous.
If we're going to go back to that level, we've got to talk about Blade 2, when they're bouncing around on the UV lights.
Isn't that Blade? Isn't that Trinity?
No,
With the
it's
ninjas?
2. It's 2 when he's in
The Vampire Ninjas.
the vampire. Yeah, but they're the other generation, aren't they? And they're
Yeah,
wearing
yeah,
the
yeah.
flusser suits with the eyes, and they
That's the
come
one.
to approach him. Yeah, seeing that, and it was around the era of like Spider-Man, but you see, Spider-Man gets away with it because he looks like he should do that.
I love
is-
Spider-Man, but I totally disagree. I think the CGI in Spider-Man has ended up looking
As it ended up looking like that.
horrendous.
Oh,
The 4K of the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, it just looks
it's done a Blade
awful.
2.
I dearly love Spider-Man and will forgive it anything, but it looks god awful. And yeah, it's a real shame. Somebody on the live chat has also just Grumpy Capybara again. 2 shout outs. Lucky you, man. He said the Scorpion King, which
Oh God.
we cannot talk about bad CGI without mentioning
Oh no.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson as the Scorpion King.
I have to
Boy,
say,
oh boy.
I remember enjoying that movie in a very basic level.
Sure.
I've never managed to rewatch it because of that
It's
scene.
No, you're not wrong. It's super fun. But that moment at the end
Yeah.
when the Scorpion King comes out with his pincy pincers,
Hmm.
it is bad news.
Is it Scorpion King or is it the end of
It's the end of The Mummy
Mummy
Returns.
Returns, yeah, it's there. Because actually Scorpion King looks okay.
Do you want to know the really shocking thing about the CGI at the end of the Scorpion King? It was released after Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, which was at the time the most photorealistic CGI models that had ever been seen in film. Talk about CGI that blew you away. When I saw that in the cinema, the film, the plot and the script are ropey AF, but it like
The CG, the spectacle.
the leap in CGI was a quantum leap, I think, in CGI. It was just unbelievable. The model of Aki Ross, I think is the protagonist of that movie, they were planning on making her a digital actress. And I think somebody correct me, someone will correct me. I think it was Ming-Na Wen who modeled and did the voice for Aki Ross. And they were going to have her as this like the first digital. It never happened because obviously computer graphics advanced quicker than the film industry, basically. But yeah, when you compare the look of the people in that Final Fantasy movie with the Scorpion King, you just think, how is this the same year, man?
Yeah.
We are coming up to the end of time. Not the end.
To the end.
Not the end of time. We're not coming.
We need Flash.
I mean, kiss your loved ones, make peace with your God. We are coming to the end of time. So I think it is time for us to look at some of the competition entries in terms of new taglines for Godzilla versus Kong. Has anybody spotted any that tickled them? Simon?
Absolutely. Let me just scroll back.
Bad breath will win.
That was a good one.
Licensed Taxi Man.
Licensed Taxi Man also gave us Kong versus Godzilla, which I love as a tagline. The movie Godzilla versus Kong, Kong versus Godzilla. There's something about that appeals to me. Sorry, Simon, go ahead.
For me, Licensed Taxi Man, the biggest mashup since the Potato Ricer. I mean, that's genius.
I have to say, we've mentioned him 3 times now. I'm gonna give him my vote as the winner.
I think we have all selected a different entry by you, Licensed Taxi Man. A mystery DVD. No, DVD. A mystery Blu-ray will be on its way to you. Please get in touch with us on the podcast thread or
PM me.
PM Kaz on AV forums, and he will be sending you what was the prize, Kaz?
Skull Island.
Oh, that's awesome! I love Skull Island.
Had to be related.
The second best of the MonsterVerse movies. Fight me. We are going to have to, I think, have a quick look at what is coming next month so that we can decide tentatively what we're going to talk about in a month's time. So let's run the ident, I think, Stu. Let's say coming soon. Okay.
If you'd like to support the AV Forums podcast on a regular basis, then why not become a patron? Head over to patreon.com/AV Forums to sign up. You can also make a one-off donation through the Super Chat or via streamlabs.com/AV Forums. All donations help us to improve the website and the podcasts. Thank you to all our supporters.
So on avforums.com, every month we publish lists of what is coming to all the major streaming services. And it's sort of from here that we are trying to take our pick as to what we might be watching over the next month. So I have noticed a couple of things that I quite like the look of. Neither of them are kind of big hitters, though, really. I noticed that Netflix has got Love and Monsters coming to it on the 14th, which I've been quite looking forward to. But that's by no means like your big blockbuster. And finally, we have a release date for Promising Young Woman, which is coming to Sky on April the 16th. And there is a review of this film in the bag waiting to come out, because I saw it back in February and loved it. So I think we need to be maybe considering that. Are there any releases on the horizon, guys, that we might discuss next week? Just bear in mind that our probable date for our next recording is May the 4th.
Be with you.
So I've looked into it. There are no Star Wars anniversaries coming up. However, Attack of the Clones
is 19 years old.
19 years old next month. That, you know, what's the anniversary for 19 years?
Don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
Don't watch it. Yeah.
I think it might be time for a critical reappraisal of Attack of the Clones.
Oh my God. It's going to get a critical reappraisal from me.
It was a steaming pile then, and it's a steaming pile now.
You know, I'm going to give it credit for introducing me to the Clone Wars and for all of the Jedi it introduced, which gave me my daughter's name. But I can't defend that film.
You named your daughter Jango Fett, right?
No, I named her
Liam Neeson. Oh no, wait, he's not in that one.
Luminara Unduli.
Plo Koon.
Yes. Shakti. No. Yeah.
And so there's that maybe.
There's nothing big. Yeah, we're a way away from Army of the Dead. I am quite looking forward to, more than any streaming title, and I'm going to get crucified for this, and already have been. I'm looking forward to watching Batman versus Superman extended cuts in IMAX, the new IMAX fully restored aspect
the TV
ratio.
cut.
Yes, I want I'm annoyed it's not 4:3. It's only 1:44. I'm gonna crop it myself. Is what I'm gonna do to make it proper TV shape.
I'm expecting you back here this time next month to tell me that it is in fact the Magnificent Ambersons.
Absolutely. It's
have you got your eye on anything, Simon? Anything coming?
Too far into it's too far into the future.
There's that Tom Clancy Without Remorse thing at the end of the month.
Sure,
yeah, which the second trailer looks horrendous of.
I mean, Without Remorse looks like a pile of. Well, no. I'm not going to prejudge.
It's a great name. It could be a Seagal film. It's a great start.
It's an okay book as well. It's fine. We could maybe use that as a springboard for Tom Clancy in general. It's been ages since I watched Hunt for the Red October. Sorry, The Hunt for Red October.
Oh, I watched that the other day.
Did you? Boy, oh boy, maybe we'll do maybe we'll do a Tom Clancy special. May the fourth be with you, Tom Clancy. What do we think about that?
Well, we could always pass it to the listeners. They could give us a vote on what they want us to do.
I love that. Do you know what we're going to do? I think we'll pass it to the patrons. We will see what. So if you want to tell us to watch something absolutely flipping god awful and become
Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, if you want us to review Attack of the Clones and talk about how great it is when writer directors are given free rein to make whatever bollocks they want, then yeah, I think we will see a slew of new patrons. Speaking of our patrons, we actually put out a poll last week, I think, and over the weekend, to ask them what their favorite movie monster was. By a mile, it was the alien xenomorph, their favorite movie monster of all time. But not far behind was The Thing. That got my vote, from the John Carpenter movie. That's my favorite movie monster. I have to put my hands up and say I made the poll.
I thought you were going to say you made The Thing. I was going to say congratulations on those effects there.
I am Rob Bottin. I have supped at the Fountain of Youth. No, I made the poll, and there were some contentious mentions on there. I put Jaws on there. Is Jaws not a movie monster?
Oh, he's got metal teeth.
No, not Jaws. Jaws.
Oh, that clarifies it. Thanks for clarifying. It's not Jaws. It's Jaws.
Not Jaws. Jaws.
Do the tune, or I'm not going to understand you.
It's a different film. It's a different shark. No, Jaws the shark. Jaws the shark. I was told that Jaws the shark is not a monster. He's just an animal. But I think he's a bit more sinister than just an animal. Now, I put him on the list. I'm going to stand by me saying that Jaws is a movie monster. I also put Frankenstein on there, and I got schooled. I got schooled in the comments. Frankenstein's a creator, Tom, you flipping idiot. Not the creation. I say to you, person who corrected me, patron, thank you for paying us money. Patron, I say to you, if you don't think Frankenstein is the monster, watch it again. Anyway, sorry, I jokes. It's jokes. So we have not come to a decision as to what we are watching next month, but we will let the patrons choose.
Sounds good.
Exactly. Thank you for being our patrons. And remember, if you are one of our patrons, you can get 10% off sweet merch in our online shop. So the amount that you save on the swag will mean your sub probably pays for itself straight away. 15 minutes over. That's not bad, is it? An hour and 15 minutes. We're gonna kick the ass of this new podcast. I tell you what, that is it, ladies and gentlemen, from the AV Forums Movie Podcast this week. My thanks go to Kaz.
I am Godzilla. You are Japan.
And Simon.
Opposable thumbs.
Opposable thumbs will always win the day. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to the channel, and you can hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss out when we publish nonsense like this, or product reviews, or our weekly podcast. By the way, we do have a weekly podcast, but it is not going ahead tomorrow. We're having an Easter break, so the next weekly podcast will be on the 14th of April, I do believe. I'm sure that our illustrious editor Phil Hinton will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we're back on the 14th for the weekly. So if you are listening to us at your leisure, good on you. You can leave us a 5-star rating on whatever service you're using, Stitcher, Spotify, what have you. all that remains for me to say is that I am Tom Davies. Thank you for joining us. We will see you for the weekly podcast in a couple of weeks' time, and the movies podcast will return on May the 4th, 2021, with a patron-chosen special. See you there, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.